We're now dismissed to the nursery as well as leaders of worship. All praise is thee to the King of Kings and the Lord our God. He is wonderful. All praise is thee to the King of Kings and the Lord our God. He is wonderful. Church said, Amen.
We'll need your Bible this morning. If you have anything at all, you can open to Revelation 4. I made a commitment to my wife just recently that I didn't want to make. We had some argument about it, but I always take my notes on my phone. And so I'm in church doing notes, and I take a lot of notes. I'll have 5 or 6 pages of notes from the church service. And it's just easier to do it on my phone. My wife has been so angry with me because it looks like I'm texting. And she says, "What's Devin going to think? He thinks you're over here texting." So I'm not texting. And I tell her, "I don't care what people think." She says, "Well, I do." And so I promised her I would not use my phone to take notes, and now I have to go take it on a hard piece of paper. So you may have your Bible there, but whatever it is, I understand you take the notes, and I understand it's not texting. So I'm cool with that. I was really honored whenever Devin asked me to speak today because of where you are in the study of Revelation. The fact that you're at Revelation 4 and 5, that is the centerpiece of the book of Revelation. Not only is Revelation 4 and 5 the centerpiece of the book of Revelation, everything goes to that chapter, and everything flows out of that chapter, and it is the 2 chapters that give you the meaning of the entire book of Revelation. But not only is that true, Revelation 4 and 5 also does that to the entire Bible. Everything in the Bible flows into Revelation 4 and 5, and everything will flow out of that. The whole story, everything, is in Revelation 4 and 5. And so to be able to speak on this text, and to do so with you and to you, a group that has had your soul saturated by this biblical story. So you're not coming at this from scratch. You have a lot to bring to the table. But I'm going to begin by a quote that I have written to lead off call this sermon. It is this: at the center of everything is God. Without that center, all of life falls apart and nothing matters. What I just said is the understatement of all understatements. If this is not true, then death and decay will ultimately swallow up creation and life. Suicide and murder are the only logical paths forward. We will destroy ourselves and each other, and it doesn't really even matter if we do or do not. I simply cannot state this strongly enough. There's no way I can emphatically and strongly state this truth. God is at the center of everything, and if He's not, we have a horrible situation. In Revelation 4 and 5, that text, those two chapters, are chapters that show the place of God in the human story. They show the place of God in the biblical story. And the Bible is not a book of multiple stories, Abraham and Moses and the people of God and the church and Israel. It's not a collection of all these stories. Really, if you really look at those stories and pull them all together, the Bible is one story. And that one story is brought together, and we see the meaning of it in Revelation 4 and 5. Revelation 4 is a setup for Revelation 5. And there are three things that are stated and given to us about God that are very, very important. Notice in Revelation 4:1, after this I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven. The heavens are open. This is about revelation. We are going to see something. We're going to see something from the place that ultimately matters. And the first voice, which I heard speaking to me like a trumpet, said, "Come up here and I will show you what must take place after this." Let's go to this next slide. And whenever we begin recognizing that He's going to show us what will happen, this story of Revelation 4 and 5, people raise the question, is this going to happen? Or has this already happened? And it has happened. It is happening. And it will happen because the one at the center of this, chapter 4 and 5, is the one who is and was and is to come. And because the one at the center of the story is the one who was and is to come, this is a permanent story that always has been, is, and will be. So once I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne stood in heaven, and one seated on the throne. That's going to be God. And He who sat there had the appearance of jasper and carnelian. And around the throne was a rainbow that had the appearance of an emerald. Around the throne were 24 thrones, and seated on the thrones were the 24 elders, clothed in white garments with golden crowns on their heads. From the throne came flashes of lightning and rumblings and peals of thunder, and before the throne were burning 7 torches of fire, which are the 7 spirits of God. And before the throne there was, as it were, a sea of glass like crystal. And around the throne, on each side of the throne, are 4 living creatures, full of eyes in front and behind. The first living creature is like a lion. And some would say that this lion represents wild animals, the wild animal kingdom, that creation that is alive. The second living creature, like an ox, this will be the tamed animals, at least some would say. And then the third living creature with the face of a man, humanity. And then the fourth living creature, like an eagle in flight. Now, I don't know for sure that's the meaning of that. Where are the fish of the sea? You know, it's not trying to be exhaustive, but the point here is that all created beings that have life, all of these created beings that have life are surrounding God. They come from God. And the 4 living creatures, each of them with 6 wings, are full of eyes all around and within, and day and night. They never cease to say, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. They have a message. They speak something. Their existence implies something. Their existence demands a certain understanding. And this is about the Creator. This is a God who is the Creator of all. And then in verse 9, whenever the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to Him who is seated on the throne, who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before Him who is seated on the throne and worship Him who lives forever and ever. They cast their crowns before the throne and say, all leaders will ultimately be led by this leader. Everyone who has a crown will ultimately toss that crown before this one who wears the crown. He's in control of everything. He's going to direct this where it needs to go. All of life will glorify Him. And we'll sing this song, worthy are you, our Lord and God, to receive glory and honor and power. Why? Because you are Creator and we are not. You created all things. There's nothing that exists, nothing that you did not create. And by your will they existed and were created. And so these three dimensions of God. God is eternal. He always has been. He always will be. He's outside of time and space. He is the uncaused cause. There is a God who is eternal. God is the Creator. There is a purpose to what He's done. And He has a claim on us because He owns us. And that's an understatement. He's our Creator. And He is holy. He is holy. And all three of those are what we are not. We are neither people who can just choose, I don't think I'll die. We have a finiteness to us. We are not the Creator, and we're actually not very holy. And that's the setup. That's the picture of God. Now let's go to the next slide. And this really is chapter 5. And so it flows out of chapter 4. And it's interesting that you have this scroll in chapter 5 that has 7 seals. And the number 7 is deliberate in the book of Revelation. And it's appropriate that whenever you look at this scroll, and this scroll is so key to what's happening in these 2 chapters, and us understanding, what does creation mean? What's it mean? What's it mean for holiness? What does that mean? What does it mean for existence in terms of being eternal? All of that is in this scroll that has 7 seals. And it is appropriate that in chapter 5 there are 7 moves that explain to us the story of the entire Bible, as well as the entire book of Revelation. And so first, I'm just going to ask you, please read Revelation 5 today before you have lunch. It's more important than food, I promise. It's a whole lot more important than food. Just read Revelation 5. But because of time, I'm just going to articulate this story in the moves that you will see. And in the first place, you start with the scroll. But again, it is not just any scroll. This has 7 seals. And when you look at a description of the scroll, what this is doing is actually mimicking the government. Because the government would produce these kinds of scrolls. And it's kind of like a picture of that. And it's got these 7 seals on it. But it's a little different, too. It has writing not just on the inside, but writing on the outside. In other words, this scroll is overflowing with information. There's something in this scroll that is absolutely key. And this scroll includes the meaning of life. This scroll brings everything together. This scroll is where we come in the book of Revelation. The term revelation, to reveal, this is where mystery, we scroll. But that leads to the next movement. And that is that you have not only the scroll, but then there is this challenge. And the challenge is, who can open it? Who can open it? If I give you a Hebrew text, and I say, here, right here, this is the explanation of the Bible in 3 or 4 sentences. You've got to be able to read Hebrew to read the text. This is a language that's not a language. This is something that's beyond our capacity to grasp. And there's a challenge. Who is worthy to open the scroll? And the point is, if you think you're big enough, step on up here. And the challenge is met with silence. When God says, listen, you want to, it's like Job, the story of Job. You know, Job has all these questions for God, and that's one part of the story. But at a certain point, God starts questioning Job. And when God questions Job, we've got a lot of silence all of a sudden. You know, give me an answer. Explain this to me. Well, let's just see what your explanation is. And you see, if we skip this challenge, we have trouble. Because we'll think our scientists can solve our problems. We'll think our therapists can heal our souls. We will think that, you know, our understanding of this modern world, because we have a modern understanding now, all of a sudden we've escaped things ourselves. And we don't realize that our own intelligence that helps us to cure diseases also allows us to kill each other in the most horrible ways. And we will not understand the need for silence. Silence is where the scientists, the therapists, all the healers, all the people, all the politicians, you know, I know how to fix things if you just vote for me, give me the power. All these people have to shut up. And the point of silence is powerful in this text. It's a deafening silence, and attention drawn to it, because that's the result of the challenge. You think you're big enough to fix life's problems? Step on up here. And everybody ends up at that place before that casket where you have to say, you know, I can't explain this. And it's the dishonesty of people in our culture and in our world who act like they have answers who do not have answers, that lead us astray and give us counterfeit salvation, counterfeit hope that ultimately disappoints us. And we have to shut our mouths. Because if we don't shut our mouths, we don't even go on with the story. So, there's the scroll, there's the challenge, there's the silence, and then there are the tears. You see, people who want to take God out of the picture do not understand what it means to be lost. They do not understand. You are slicing your own throat. You don't understand the hell you are committing yourself to. And so, there's tears. If nobody can fix our problems, it doesn't matter who you vote for. It doesn't matter. Is Ecclesiastes true? It's all vain. Does any of it matter? Well, listen. That's cause for weeping. How do you explain death, injustice? I mean, at least if somebody has burned me in my life, I've got a path of healing that includes forgiving them. Forgiveness? What does forgiveness mean? What does this story matter to my father who's dead, and right now, if you dug his body up, he'd be a decaying corpse? You're going to die sooner or later. You know, I was looking at doing a sermon on the thief on the cross. And so I was Googling the last words of people who are sentenced to die because of their own criminal behavior. And you know, I was really struck by this one guy that was interviewed. as he was going to be able to have his last meal. And they asked him, "How are you doing? And what are you thinking as you go to execution?" And I'll never forget he's kind of laughed. He said, "Well, I got this morning, and I started to brush my teeth, and I thought, why would I brush my teeth? How much time did you spend getting ready for church today? If you would have known that within an hour of the time we leave church, you were going to die, what would you say doesn't matter? You say, if nothing matters, it's grief. It's incredible grief. Now, this is why I didn't want to read through this text, because the next move is where you see this joining of God. He is on the throne, He is the Creator, He's eternal, and He's holy. And what He does is He is able, we are finding the one who can take the scroll, and that is the Lamb. And basically all that is a description of the lion and the lamb. And so it's the power of God, and the power of God is to overcome this whole situation as God steps into the situation. God made Him who knew no sin to become sin for us, that we might be the righteousness of God. This is the righteous gift of righteousness that Paul speaks of in Romans 5:17. This is God so loved the world that He gave His one and only Son. This is where the Lion of the tribe of Judah, this is where we recognize that God has stepped into this picture. And so the Lion and the Lamb are one, as the God at the center of the throne is one. And so the Creator joins the creation. He steps into the story, and it is what happens on the cross that brings this all together and pulls all the meaning of everything into this. And basically the message is that victory is through sacrifice. It's a kind of power we're not used to. It's very different than we think. And it's a matter of being willing to give our lives for other people. And as you see this ultimate God on the throne, and as He becomes the slaughtered lamb, the point is He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to do that. And this is out of love for us. This is the ultimate picture of the ultimate being. And it is the God who has the place of the universe above everybody else and everything else. And instead He surrenders all that because there's a better place, and that better place is on a cross, dying and suffering for other people. There's nothing like the desire to give, and there's nothing greater to give than ultimate love. And this is the picture of God.